Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Acting Secretary. Acting Secretary, do you think that employees should be able to exercise their religious freedoms at work?
I do believe in religious freedoms, yes, Congressman.
And so therefore, what limits would you place on their First Amendment right to exercise their religious freedom at work? Employees.
Ooh, okay, so Congressman, you're asking me some things that are really outside my area of expertise, but I do believe in religious freedom. I think that's important.
So you would not place any limits on employees' right to exercise their religious freedom at work? Their First Amendment protected religious freedom at work.
So, Congressman, I don't know if you're asking about something specific that the Department of Labor has done.
Well, I would like to know if you would put any limits on an employee's right to practice their religious freedom at work as protected by the First Amendment.
So, thank you, Congressman. I think if you are referring to a rule of our agency under the Office of Federal Contractor Compliance Programs, what we did there was...
Okay, let me just pause you. Do you think that religious or faith-based organizations should be able to operate according to their sincerely held religious beliefs?
So let me answer it this way, Congressman. The department is committed to protecting religious freedom on behalf of all Americans. And no one should have to choose between earning a living and practicing their religious faith.
Good to hear that. So what limits would you place on the rights of a faith-based organization to practice their First Amendment rights in religious freedom?
So again, I think you're asking about OFCCP, and we...
Yes, since you've referenced it, the new rule that came out that weakened the Trump administration's rule on protecting the organization's rights as it applies to hiring in specific is obviously what we're referencing to, as you're aware of. So do you think that employers' First Amendment rights to free exercise applies to the ability to hire for a faith-based organization?
Right. Thank you, Congressman. So the religious exemption is still in place. What we did in rescinding a rule of the prior administration was restore OFCCP's longstanding practice, which is related to the test for religious exemption for religious exemption.
There's already law in place that prohibits discrimination, obviously legally prohibited discrimination. However, a faith-based organization should have the right to, or does have the right to go ahead and practice their faith-based, their sincerely held religious beliefs. But what your rule has done is try to make it easier for them to be sued on the basis of hiring if the hiring would compromise their deeply held religious beliefs. So do you think that, again, employers' First Amendment right to free exercise applies to the ability to hire?
Thank you, Congressman. So the religious exemption is still in place. Our agency is charged with enforcing authorities to protect workers from discrimination, and we will faithfully apply the law on both of those, in both of those areas.
All right. DOL recently, and I would say egregiously, rescinded a rule that impacts the ability of religious organizations to participate in federal contracts unless they're willing to violate those deeply held religious beliefs that are, again, are protected. So what assurances can you give that you'll protect religious freedom, including, again, the First Amendment right of religious organizations that bid on federal contracts?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so the religious exemption is still in place. I want to be very clear about that.
Let's move on to something that you wrote. You wrote in an article in the Seattle Journal for Social Injustice in which you said, the very definition of a corporation is an entity that is created to permit maximum income and designed to insulate individuals who will profit from liability for the acts of that entity seems to promote and perpetuate economic injustice. So essentially you're saying that all the companies over which you have enforcement authority are instruments of economic injustice. Do you believe that?
Thank you very much, Congressman. I think that was a transcript from a speech, maybe, and without broader context, I will say that I have and will continue to, and have for many decades, worked with corporations of all sizes.
Do you believe that companies are inherently unjust?
No, I do not believe that.
Okay. So how would you characterize your view of a corporation today, then, if it's not unjust based on what you said or what you wrote?
I think that corporations play an important role. I think that corporations, to the extent, again, here to talk about what the Department of Labor does, they can be job creators, right? They can be small businesses, they can be large businesses. And
let me stop you. I want to read something that you said. You said that Latino workers view Asians generally not as friends or even strangers, but as enemies, the very source of their daily subjugation. What did you mean by that? Let me say it again. Latino workers view Asians generally not as friends or even strangers, but as enemies, the very source of their daily subjugation.
So, so there's a so.
Do you think that Latino workers view Asians as their enemies and the source of their daily subjugation?
I think, and I'm going to do my best here with that, Congressman. I think that was
I'd
something
like to
from
know if
a
you
while
believe
ago.
that. Do you believe that Asians generally, quote, that Latino workers view Asians or generally not as friends or even strangers, but as enemies, the very source of their daily subjugation? Do you believe that that Asians are subjugating Latino workers?
I believe what I was talking about, Congressman, is this is long before I came into government. This was when I worked at a nonprofit organization representing workers. I was describing the very real experience.
So you don't believe that?
I don't believe it as a general matter, but in the context of the experience I was talking
Thank you.
about.
My time has expired. Thank you, Madam Chairman.